Imitation dairy products in my cooking? Horrors. But how do you tell real dairy foods from imitations? Check the ingredient list or check for the real seal. It tells you at a glance it's a real dairy food. The American Dairy Association assures it. So, to get the taste of real cheese, real cream, read this or see the real seal. Frightfully simple.
You know it's real when you see the real seal.
It may be the most unusual channel on your TV, and you might even be able to have your own show. The Stars of Community Access, Thursday at 9 on Fox 17 News.
Doc, are you in here? Where are you? Well, you better not be asleep again. You better not be a nurse. So, Doc, it's time for the show.
Greetings, Fright fans. Dr. Gangrene here, your physician of Fright. Welcome to Chiller Cinema, the live show.
So I'd assume you have some challenges with live television.
Well, after I moved the show, initially I started the show in Hendersonville, Tennessee, on their cable access station, which is a tiny, small town compared to Nashville. Then I moved it into Nashville, which has a much wider viewing audience. They, after a year or two, built a brand new studio. And once they did that, I said, you know, I want to try to do a live show. And we were, in fact, the first program ever to do a live show out of the new studio. And that was fun. It's a totally different vibe. What was cool about it is that when you finish shooting, you're done. There's no editing time. Because I spend hours and hours editing. As you know, putting shows together, I spend sometimes hundreds of hours on an episode, especially a 2-hour episode. It's crazy the amount of time that can go into editing. If there's anything complicated at all, if you got green screen or anything like that, especially, you know. So, which of course we didn't have in the early days, but we'll get to that. The live shows were great. We would have a live audience there. So there was just this electricity in the air, and it was a lot of fun. We always had a band and at least 2 guests, someone like a local toy collector or a hobby collector or an author. Sometimes we had a sideshow performer on the show one time. We had a guy with a B9 robot who actually turned out to be a horror host later, did his own show. He was inspired by us and decided to do his own show. That's Dr. Pureblood, Dale Watson. And so they were a lot of fun.
Any mishaps you'd like to tell us about?
Oh, we always had problems. It was live TV, and we were learning as we went. Nobody in the studio really knew what they were doing. That was always sound issues. That was the big problem, sound. Seems like we could never get the band to mic just right. We really needed to bring a guy in who was a good sound guy. That's what the problem was. But you know, you mess up on live TV, you just keep going. You just go, hey, this is live TV. This is what you get, and you just roll with it. So it's all in fun.
Take it away, brother. waking from their frozen sleep. They don't realize they're in space so deep. Dr. Smith, fatal plan. Someone call F Command. F Command, do you read? F Command, where are we? Dr. Smith, to employ the P9 robot to destroy. Wow, that is something.
Oh, I hear you, Doc. Any fond memories from this incarnation of the show?
Some of my favorite moments just from the show overall, there's a few different ones. Having my kids involved. One time, my son dressed as me for Halloween, which was amazing. I mean, how many people can say their son dressed as them for Halloween? He dressed as a young Dr. Gangrene. That was really cool. I had a kid come up to me at a show. We were doing one time live. We were doing a live from a haunted house and a remote filming, and this kid was kind of hanging around in the background. We did our skit and everything. When we got done, you know, I had a group of kids that we were interacting with, and afterwards this one kid came up and he goes, "Hey, thanks. This is something I'll always remember." And he turned around and ran off. And I looked at Chuck and I said, "Man, that's it right there. That's why I do this." You know, it was really cool. There's been some really neat stuff that's happened over the years, though. We got to be on Spike TV, hosting the movie Santa's Sleigh. That was pretty cool. Was asked to be part of Dick Tracy. I was in the Dick Tracy comic strip, the national, you know, Dick Tracy. Had Dr. Gangrene as a guest appearance. That was pretty amazing. I've met Zachary. Consider him, you know, not good friends with him or anything, but yeah, you know, got to meet Zachary, interact. He knows who I am. It's cool. I mean, it's just so many things have happened over the course of doing this show. I mean, it's been a really, really fun ride.
Come to think of it, weren't you one of the first horror movie hosts to syndicate their own show?
Well, when I started out, like I said, it was in Hendersonville, Tennessee, and then I decided to move it to Nashville, Tennessee. Well, once I did that, I was on the air for a little bit, and I got contacted by a guy. The first one was a guy named Marty up in Greenville, Massachusetts, at a little station up there, and he asked me, I guess he found my website, and he asked me if I would send him copies of my show, and he wanted to run it up there. And really, I think I'm pretty much the first horror host who started the self-syndication thing. I sent him copies of it, and then next thing you know, I had somebody else hit me up. "Hey, can we get copies for our city?" I started sending out copies there. Before you knew it, I was sending tapes out to Atlanta and Massachusetts and all these different cities around really the southeast and eastern border. Not a lot out west so much, but really covering a lot of this area around here. And it was cool, you know, getting seen in other cities and whatnot. But really my focus was always local, because that's where the horror host works best, is local, because you can meet people, you can do live things, and you meet people and they watch the show, and you put them on TV and they tell their friends and family, and you know, it just kind of, that's how you grow a fan base, slowly but surely. And it is a slow thing. It took about a year before I really knew people were watching or started getting any kind of feedback. For that first year, it was always like, what's going on with this? Is anybody even watching? Why am I doing it? But they started coming around, and before you know it, I started getting fan letters of people recognizing me out in public, and that really was rewarding, and that was cool.
So tell us a little bit about that move from public access to the CW.
Well, that was kind of cool too, the move to the CW, because I always kind of wanted to take it to the next level. I wanted to follow in the footsteps of the classic horror hosts and be on the actual broadcast TV. I called the program director over at actually before the CW, which used to be the WB, I was on UPN. Late night, I bought advertising space, like at 1 or 2 in the morning for a couple of months. And there was a guy there that was doing the playback named Mike Hook. I didn't know this at the time, but he was just a playback guy. Well, fast forward a few years, and I decided, you know, well, I think it's time to try this again. Called up the WB, at that point it was WB, and talked to the program director. Well, lo and behold, the program director is now Mike Hook, the guy that used to do the playback for my show years prior on UPN. He said, "Oh, dude, I know who you are. I love your show. I used to do your playback. I was the guy that was putting your tapes in the machines." He said, I love your show, let's talk. And we did. He had a movie package, he let me host, and the rest was history. I came in and they were providing movies and the whole thing, and it was really cool. So that's how that started.
You have got to have some favorite moments from Dr. Gangrene's creature features. Can you tell us about them?
Well, I think some of my favorite moments from the creature feature, because that's what we called it, it's Dr. Gangrene. Original show was Chiller Cinema, then Dr. Gangrene's Chiller Cinema, kind of added that to it to get the branding. Then it was creature feature, which later became Dr. Gangrene's creature feature. That's the CW show, or WB show. And that was a 2-hour show. Once we went to the CW, we expanded it to a 2-hour format and changed, that's where we were hosting the whole movies instead of the half-hour format that we had with Chiller Cinema. Some of my favorite moments from that would just be some of the movies that we got to host, because there was some really cool stuff like Total Recall with Arnold Schwarzenegger and The House That Dripped Blood, the Hammer movie. And what was cool about that was I had called my program director and said, listen, if you ever get a chance to get House That Dripped Blood or House of Long Shadows, I'd love to get that, because they both have Christopher Lee and Vincent Price in them, and it would be cool. We could show it right around their birthday. And sure enough, he got the House That Dripped Blood. And so we showed it on May 27th, which is both of their birthdays, which kind of wound up being pretty cool. But that would be the coolest thing. We also showed some really great bad movies like Aerobicide, which is also known as Killer Workout, which is an 80s slasher movie that takes place in a aerobic studio. So you get a whole bunch of spandex and killing. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. Come on.
So what is the biggest difference between this show and the public access show?
Well, like I said, the biggest difference was that we were showing entire movies now, whereas the public access show was a half-hour show filled up with clips, music videos, and interviews. This was actual hosting of a movie. So it would come on, introduce the movie, come in the breaks, have a skit that ran throughout the whole 2 hours. So that was the main difference.
Now we get to some of the meat and potatoes. What are some of your favorite horror and sci-fi flicks?
Well, my stock answer to that question has always been anything with Vincent Price. Because, I discovered him when I was a kid. Back in the 70s, there was a show called The Big Show that came on in afternoons in Nashville. And it showed all the Universal classics. So, of course, grew up on those. But it would also show some Vincent Price movies occasionally. And like I said, House on Haunted Hill made a huge impression. I've a wide range of horror and sci-fi stuff that I like. I mean, I love some good bad movies. I mean, I'm a big fan of bad movies. Not a Mystery Science Theater fan, ironically. I don't care for the whole talking over throughout the movie thing, but I love the movies themselves. So the movies that they mock on Mystery Science Theater and make fun of, I love to watch just for the bad quality of them. That's charming in and of itself. I appreciate that. I appreciate the work and failure of quality of those films. They're great. So anyway, it's just so many of them. And as far as sci-fi films, I think my all-time favorite film is probably the original Planet of the Apes. I love that movie. Big Apes fan.
Are there any movies you'd like to show that you haven't shown so far?